Hello everybody, my name is Freakzii and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is the 9th of December 2025, which only means one thing. The Pokémon Legends ZA Mega Evolution DLC releases tomorrow on December 10th. So I thought over the last few weeks I've been deep diving into the base game, catching all of the post game legendaries and hitting the Battle Royale ladder. So with that all in mind, I thought I would come to answer the big question today of, does Pokémon Legends ZA really offer us enough with the base game? Has the DLC been released far too early? And my overall thoughts and a full review of Pokémon Legends ZA. So the first point I wanted to talk about was the end game content within the game and if the DLC has been released too soon. In my opinion, as the game was only released on October 16th and with the DLC coming over tomorrow, December 10th, it's a very short amount of time, especially if you consider we just look at other Pokemon games, Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet. Their DLCs came very far after with kind of a very big fleshed out roadmap of content after the game had been released. So kind of after the DK Bonanza release and they released that DLC very soon, I was very shocked that Pokemon kind of took a similar sort of way of releasing content, 2 months after release, basically, which isn't great, as I feel, some of this, or from the leaks in the content, it looks like that we're going to be doing and going through a lot of these Hooper portals to explore and catch new Pokemon and maybe look at the world and the Luminos map in a different sort of way. And I think this is really great, but this is maybe content that should have been kept in the base game. And maybe I've seen all of this stuff about over leveling and going over level 100. I feel like maybe that should have been a significant part of the DLC, while it's going to be anyway. But all this super stuff maybe should have been left in the post game of the original game. As for me, I've just recently caught all the legendaries, and now kind of, other than playing online and completing the getting shinies and catching shinies, there's not much else really to do. And I feel they're definitely going to add that with all these portals, and you're going to be able to catch lots of different Pokemon and probably lots more legendaries and these sort of things. But I definitely think that this sort of content should have been, a sort of a similar to the Terra Raids, in a way to kind of carry on catching high level Pokemon after you finish the game. But as I say, it's not my decision, and I'm sure, with a very big 30th anniversary month coming up next year for Pokemon, I'm sure that they wouldn't want to just release the DLC for ZA when they maybe have other bigger plans and other bigger announcements that it might get in the way of. But as I say, for me, it's a frustrating thing to add another, £20, $25 or so to a DLC price mark. So I think it's, something that in the future, I really hope that they don't kind of go for this trend of making the DLC come out 2 months before again for Gen 10 and things like that. I hope they have more of a fleshed out storyline and post game, but I'm still kind of happy with what content we got in the end game. But at the end of the day, if you're someone who spent hundreds of hours in the regular main series games, then maybe it was a little bit thin on content for you. So now, with the DLC controversy discussed, I thought I would actually jump in and discuss what I actually thought about the game. Starting with the story and characters, I thought it was a real darker and deeper dive into a Pokemon narrative, similar to what they've done in structure with Legends Arceus, where they've gone in and discussed some more deeper topics, e.g. with AZ passing away, for example. If you didn't know that already, sorry for the spoiler, but while you're watching a review anyway. But yeah, I thought they did a really great job of showing time passing within Lumino City, and kind of all of the different characters from X and Y that they have brought in have been fantastically reused, in my opinion, and kind of given new roles, and kind of you can see where their lives all went after the X and Y story had finished. I thought especially kind of using AZ as kind of a main point of the story, and kind of when the end of the game happened and he passed, it was as someone who'd played the original X and Y games as well, it was a very sad moment to see him go, but it kind of felt like we got a final end to a story point that we maybe didn't get with the end of X and Y. I think definitely I would like them to see them carrying on doing this sort of thing with when the DLC comes out, and hopefully, maybe bringing in even more characters and making more of these backstories, and hopefully there's a lot more kind of side stories and side quests with a bit more depth to them, which kind of can tell and show interesting stories and kind of give us even more spin-offs and allow us to kind of create, even more fan theories and drama about what's happening in the Pokemon universe, and allow us to, maybe tie some cross ends that haven't already been tied over within the game. The next talking point I thought I'd want to discuss, and one that some people might think is even more controversial than the DLC release, is the environment and performance of the game. I definitely enjoyed the game. I understand people's criticisms and people who maybe, aren't hardcore Pokemon fans. It isn't their sort of main games that they play. I totally understand when you have, especially things on the Switch 2 coming out like Donkey Kong and Bonanza, which are graphically beautiful. Why can't the Pokemon games handle similar? I get that there are limitations due to the fact that we're also sharing this game with the Switch One, and they obviously can't go way over the top. But I still really felt that the city, for me personally, wasn't busy enough. It didn't have it was the same sort of NPCs in every area, and they're really these big, wide, vast, open streets. There should be more people, and I feel that it definitely kind of took away from the experience, especially when some of the textures in the areas, they do feel very similar. They don't feel very recognizable in my like the different bends and cuts in the road, but all the streets feel very similar in my eyes still, and it wasn't something that I was overly impressed with. Don't get me wrong, for a Pokemon game, it's incredible, and again, a great upgrade on Scarlet and Violet and the graphics we got there, but still, for me, there's a lot of work that needs doing, especially coming into the 10th generation and the 30th anniversary, that hopefully, with the new engine they've got coming for the new Pokemon games, they can really improve on the graphics and kind of, I guess we can use Legends EA as a final benchmark of the full potential of the Switch 1 and kind of moving on to the next Switch 2 generation and showing what the best sort of hybrid game we could make before we have to, we're moving on to this hopefully way better generation where we're going to have way more vast open worlds and more active interactive worlds and things like this. But for the moment, it's still, for me, especially considering the game was based in one city, I feel like some of the areas should have been a lot more detailed. Like, look how large of an area Legend Arceus was, and that it still felt the same amount of liveliness in the world for me. There wasn't, it's a big boisterous city. It should be, people running around, lots of loud noises, lots of things going on. Like Pokemon don't interact with the city very well, other than maybe sitting on the occasional tree. There need to be more things like that to make it feel more alive and more like a real city. As I say, I appreciate the hardware limitations and things like that this game had, but for me, I still need more at this point from Game Freak and the Pokemon Company. We've been saying this all the way through from Sword and Shield to now the end of the Switch 1 generation. So I appreciate what they have done with this game, and I really enjoyed the graphics and the kind of the art style. But especially coming in with all these new cutscenes and the way they're trying to make it the open world, they really need to make things bigger and better. And especially, they're missing out on key things again. Like, it's a big boisterous city, but the game is just empty and it's the same background music. There's no, they really needed to maybe add voiced extras and things like that. People shouting from markets and trying to get people's attention, people talking throughout the streets. It didn't feel like a living city, basically. And compared to, even some of the bigger cities in Scarlet and Violet and especially Sword and Shield, it felt just as lively as one of them, but just a slightly bit bigger, which isn't great in my opinion. As if the whole city is based on one game, for me they really should have had more textures and more kind of individual and bigger districts maybe. But as I say, it's still a really great game and I enjoyed it, but it's just a few caveats for me. But I know other people have bigger issues with it, especially people who might not be regular to Pokemon games. And if Pokemon want to kind of keep attracting people and attract new gamers and bigger audiences, they're going to need to address this and kind of look at games like Xenoblade Chronicles and Hyrule Warriors, which have all of these big things happening on screen and they have way better graphics than Pokemon. So hopefully with Gen 10 and the new hopeful engine coming, this is something that they can fix. I will say, even though I was not impressed with the graphics and how the game necessarily looked, I will say that kind of there is no performance issues at any point, and I can't speak for the Switch 1 as that's not something that I've tried the game on, but at least for the Switch 2, I have to say they definitely did a good job at optimizing the game and giving a smooth experience. I never had any sort of frame rate drops or noticeable low frames at any point, which is great considering how even still in the souped up Switch 2 version of Scarlet and Violet, there are still points where it can get a little bit frame ratey in my opinion. So it's very good that they've done it, even if it wasn't as lively and popular as a city. It's still a city that kind of had a lot of ability to perform well, and the game, never lagged or never had any performance issues. So moving on from the environment and performance, I thought the next thing I'd like to talk about is the actual gameplay and the battling mechanics in the game. I will say, to start firstly with the catching mechanics, I really, really enjoyed them, and I thought they were very well similar to Legends Arceus. So I was worried that kind of with the fact that it's going to be smaller environments and kind of not as big open areas, that kind of it wasn't going to be fun to catch Pokemon, but that kind of same gameplay loop is still there, and especially with the research expecting you to catch multiple of different types of Pokemon, it's still, that fun gameplay loop to catch multiple Pokemon and get that catching mechanic really well put back into the game. So in addition to the catching mechanics, I really did think that the new live battle system is really good. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it had kind of significant flaws in a few areas, but I thought overall it was a really good and step forward for the Pokemon Company of really great experimentation. Ever since I was a kid, the one thing I wanted out of a Pokemon game was this sort of live action battling style. So I really think that this has produced that, and considering it still had to run on the Switch One, I thought that the battling system and how they kind of carve out the battle environments and where you can battle when it's you can battle anywhere in the city, I thought it was a really, really great way to do things. But at the same time, there are still definitely some flaws in there. I thought especially kind of battling on rooftops, this is something that I really didn't enjoy doing, as unfortunately, if you for example, my Emboar new rollout, and it rolled off of that rooftop more times than I can count. And it was funny the first or second time, but when you're getting like destroyed by the other person's team and your Pokemon's all the way down there, or you're nearly gonna get killed yourself because your screen's going red because the Pokemon's attacking you now that your Pokemon is down the bottom and won't respawn back up, it is slightly frustrating that the Pokemon didn't kind of re-jump onto the roof or respawn on the roof like quicker, if that makes sense. And especially as well, another thing for me was, if there would be a very small lamppost in the way, they would just hit the lamppost with, especially with ranged attacks. And I found it very frustrating that they couldn't kind of the Pokemon couldn't direct themselves to maybe consider these sort of objects that are in the way, because I found it's slightly hard to get the Pokemon to stand where you want it to. But I guess that's kind of at the same time a bit realistic, as you're not going to be able to 100% control where the Pokemon goes. You're just going to be able to control what moves and tell it what moves to do. I did think it was a really good and really fun. I thought that kind of status moves maybe need a bit of a rethink maybe in this format, especially around like boss battles and this sort of things. Obviously didn't have any effects on bosses, but I thought that status moves kind of, apart from Toxic, I thought they were pretty weak personally. But overall, again, with the gameplay mechanics and the battle system, I thought that kind of, especially for boss fights, the one thing I didn't really like about Legends EA is that the boss fights felt very bullet spongy, or you had to hit them a bunch of times. But especially with the boss fights we had in this game, the Rogue Mega Revolutions, I thought that the battle mechanics for that worked really well. I didn't really feel at any point with any of the fights, especially with even the Zygarde fight at the end, I didn't feel it was way too long. Like with the end game fights in Legends Arceus, I thought for some of them they were way too long and a bit boring, to be honest. But I thought it was a real great level of, it wasn't too challenging, but at the same time it wasn't just a complete walkover. But at the same time, if you were struggling, you were able to level up your Pokemon to a higher level, and you were able to run through things quite quickly. But overall, I'm very happy with how the battle system works. But my only other real concern with it was kind of when running around the Legends, the Royale, the ZA Royale. I really enjoyed that part of it. I thought it was good, and I thought the battling system again works really well. However, my own issue was kind of sneaking up on people was very frustrating. Their movements were very erratic, and it didn't feel like when you snuck up on people and snuck up on Pokemon in Legends Arceus, it felt a lot more natural in how they noticed you, especially because in a lot of these battle zone areas for the ZA Royale, it felt like they were very just open spaces that were meant for the city. And again, as I mentioned, because these areas are so empty, just big corridors, there's nothing to really hide behind to get the Pokemon, or so the trainers don't hear you, so then their Pokemon sneak Pokemon attack you. But overall, I thought kind of it was a really great experiment from the Pokemon Company, and I'm all for the Legends games doing this and kind of adding things that hopefully maybe can be added into the main series game, like hopefully with all of this over leveling stuff. I imagine that's something that's probably going to be introduced in Gen 10 as well. But overall, with the battle mechanics, it's something I definitely think they can build on. And if it's for next Legend games, or if they want to try and incorporate some sort of live battling into the main series games as well, I really think this is a great start for when they get newer, stronger engines on the Switch 2 that can do the things even better. I really think it's going to be a great opportunity for the Pokemon Company going forward, and something that I always loved the turn-based battling, and it's something that I really enjoy still playing through for the game, but definitely a different way to play the game, and a different way to play the game for people who maybe don't like that turn-based art like RPG mechanics, but they do really like Pokemon still. So kind of the final talking point that I had is around the new Mega Evolutions, and I'm really happy that they added so many, obviously, as it is the game's new mechanic. I thought that it works really well. I thought there was points it's kind of frustrating where sometimes it wouldn't Mega Evolve you straight away, but still I thought being able to Mega Evolve all the time, I thought it was really great, and I thought it was really cool that even Alpha Pokemon, when you Mega Evolve them, they get even bigger, and I thought it was, the thrill of catching Alpha Pokemon, even not just for the extra stats, but just for the Pokemon with a bigger size. I thought it was really cool and really well done, to be honest, despite it maybe giving you a slight disadvantage with the bigger hitbox. But overall, I enjoyed all of the new Megas. My favourite personally was Mega Scolipede. I know that there's people who don't like some of them, and that's going to be the case with Pokemon. You're not going to like everything, but I think overall they're doing a really great job, and hopefully maybe in the future they should look at maybe looking to give, if they're another main series game at some point uses Mega Evolution, look to give even more Pokemon Mega Evolutions. So I think it's a real great opportunity to expand and add to lots of different Pokemon that maybe haven't been touched for a long time as well. So, to conclude on all of the points I've made and give you an overall opinion on the game, I really, really did enjoy it. As someone who's played Pokemon for 15-20 years now, it's a series that I love to death, and I think that this is an addition that is again moved the series forward. I appreciate a lot of people think that it could have had better graphics or a bigger, more expansive environment, or the issues with how the DLC is being released too soon, and I definitely agree with all those things. But I think as a kind of, this is going to be the final game that is going to be released on Switch 1 and Switch 2, and I really think it's a really great way to show the full potential of what games we had on the Switch 1, whilst also giving us an idea of what we can look forward to on the new Switch 2 generation. I appreciate the game is not perfect, but it's giving us a setup for games in the future that I think are going to be fantastic and use and bring some of these elements into an even bigger and more exciting way to use them, and with more expansive wide open worlds with better graphics. And I think it's a really fantastic addition to the Legends series, and hopefully they keep making more of them, and they can even incorporate some of these gameplay mechanics into the main games themselves. I definitely would recommend it for everybody, kind of, even if you're not somebody who maybe likes Pokemon games normally and that turn-based way of battling. It's a really great game. It's really easy to maneuver around the map. It's, despite it being slightly small, and I'm really hopeful for the DLC, and kind of hopefully in future DLCs they're able to, if they are planning to release more, they can maybe not just use the same areas and Hooper portals, but also kind of expand and maybe show us more of the region, and see and how things have moved on in other parts of the region and not just in Lumino City. So guys, that's about it for my review of Pokemon Legends ZA's base game. I really hope you've enjoyed listening to my opinions, and let me know in the comments below if you agreed or disagreed, or if you haven't played the game before. I hope this is giving you kind of an idea if you'd like to play it or not. Let me know in the comments below, as I say, your opinions on the game, and also your favourite current Mega Evolution, be it a new one that's just being released or even if it's still an old one. I really hope for you, those of you who are enjoying the Mega Dimensions DLC tomorrow, that you have a great time playing through, and hopefully I will be able to see you in some Hooper battles or whatever they're going to be called when the DLC is released. Thank you very much for watching again. As I say, it would be really appreciated if you could subscribe and check out some of my other videos if you have enjoyed what you have watched today. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you very soon.